It's great to see you all here, and I really appreciate you coming because I know that you guys have been very, very busy. I know it's a lot of work, and so I don't take it for granted that you all coming here, listening to me, but I believe that you'll get something out of it. Not so? Okay. Cool. I want to talk today about being dynamic. And some of you have been exposed to the 12 Ds of world-class leadership. Those of you who have been coaching, we've looked at the deliberate leader. We've looked at the dialoguing leader, right? We've looked at some of those. Some of you have started looking at the disciplined leader. There are a couple of you, we've gone into that. Today, we're going to look at the dynamic leader. And I'm hoping that everyone here sees themselves as a leader. Leadership is not about position. Someone once said there are a lot of people in leadership positions, but very few leaders, okay? Leadership is about influence. So as long as you're influencing people, then you're a leader. How many of you are parents here? You're a leader in your home. You're leading your children, right? How many of you are an older sibling? So you've got a younger sibling, okay? How many of you are last born? Okay, there are a lot of last borns who influence a lot, eh? I know if you just speak to people like Malusi over here, you know, how many of you would think he's a last born? Okay. He's actually a last born and yet influences so many people. I know in his family setting he's a big influencer. All right. So we all influence people. And if you really tap into this thing today, I promise you this is the kind of seminar that takes you places. And don't limit those places to just this organization. You know, just think big, think wide in terms of how dynamic you want to be. So what does the word dynamic actually mean? You know, when someone says there's a dynamic in our team or there's a dynamic in this system, when we use that word as a noun, the term dynamic speaks of a force that stimulates change or progress within a system or process. Isn't that powerful? A force that stimulates change or progress within a system or process. So how many of you here see yourselves as dynamic? How many of you feel like you've been that force in this organization that is stimulating change or progress within a system or a process? That's what we mean when we're talking about someone being dynamic. And typically when we talk about someone being dynamic, we associate it with certain words. You hear people saying this person is very spirited, okay, or very energetic, or very positive, or this person challenges the status quo. And it's interesting, just as I've coached hundreds and hundreds of people, many different people and so on, very often I can literally predict which guys are going to make it and go far in terms of leadership, in terms of influence, and which guys aren't going to make it, simply because of this dynamic. Simply because of this. And I don't tell people. I don't sit there and I say, dude, you know what? Do you know that today they can actually, you know that there's a profile, a friend of mine has got a profile, they've designed a profile, a particular thing, evaluator, that can predict potential to about 75% accuracy, right? Because there's certain things that go with potential. For example, ability to learn. There's some of you, you're very quick learners and you're very open to learning. And others of you, you're very defensive. Okay, that's already a predictor. Some of you, you don't blame other people. Others here, you blame a lot of people, all right? Or you rationalize your mediocrity. You know, there's some people like that. They're very mediocre, but they always explain it away. Yeah, but you can understand, Paul, you know, because, you know, my upbringing. But you can understand, Paul, you know, the way I grew up. Paul, you know, where I was born. You know, I was born on, some of us, Paul, we're not like, some of us were born on the wrong side of the railway track. But I can find so many people who are also born on the wrong side of the railway track, and they're doing amazing things today. Because they didn't rationalize their mediocrity. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is one of those things. If you look at each of these qualities, the thing about being dynamic, if you look at each of the qualities, the behaviors around being a dynamic person, and you say to yourself, where am I messing up here? And where am I actually succeeding? You'll see what will happen. Okay, are you ready? Are you steady? I'm consistently respectful towards others. I'm consistently respectful towards others. This is an interesting one. I still remember a time I was doing some work for a particular bank, okay? I'm not allowed to mention its name in these parts, okay? But a particular bank, And I was coaching a particular lady who was heading up a team. And I remember having an experience where she said to me, Paul, there's been a grievance against me. I've been sideswiped by it. She actually called it a mutiny, against me. And what had happened was some of her subordinates had basically put in a grievance. And some of the information was information she had given them. So for example, she hadn't attended particular training and she came through and she said, oh guys, I've missed the training. I forgot about it. It was training that just cost a few $100, but they put that on their list, wasting company money by missing training, okay? And when I would coach her, I asked an interesting question. I said to her, what are your values? And one of her main values was respect. And I said, what does that look like? And she said to me, you know what, Paul? When people raise their voice, I feel disrespected. In my home, we don't do that. When people raise their voice at me, I feel disrespected. That's what she said. Okay? I thought, okay, cool, fair enough, fine. I was then called into that team to do an intervention for them, right? Because of what had happened. And I saw that dynamic taking place, excuse the pun, right? Where one of the people who had put in this grievance was literally shouting at her boss, right? Raising her voice. She was an older woman. I won't say the exact age because those of you who are that age might be like, well, Paul, what are you saying, right? She was an older woman. And what was interesting was I saw her raising her voice. Then I addressed this lady and I said, tell me something. What are your values? And she says, respect. Okay? Then I said, what does respect look like? And she said, you know what, Paul? I come to work early. And when my boss sets up a meeting that's early because she knows that I'm going to be at work, and then pitches up late for that meeting and expects me to drop everything I'm doing and still meet with me, I feel disrespected because my time is just as important as her time. Can you see what's going on here? Their espoused value system was respect, but it looked different. And so in your teams, I would encourage you to sit down and to say, yes, we value mutual respect. I want you to respect me and I will respect you. But I understand what respect looks like for you and you understand what respect looks like for me. Does that make sense? And people who become very dynamic in how they lead people, they're always respectful, but not just according to how they see respect, also according to how other people see respect. Does that make sense? How many of you have ever had to challenge someone and say, I felt disrespected when you spoke to me like that? And what did the person say? Oh, but I was just joking around with you. Come on, I know real life situations. It's happened with you guys. Where someone will say, yo, the way so-and-so said that to me, he was like just mocking me. But I know that person's sense of humor. And if I go to that individual, they'll be like, okay, Paul, maybe I'll apologize to them, but I was just joking around. So part of emotional intelligence is understanding what does respect look like. Does that make sense? Okay? Now, how do I respect the people around me? Right? One of my chapters in my marriage book is actually honoring your spouse. And when I teach on that, I say to people, okay, if you're going for a date with your spouse, let her know if you're running late or him know if you're running late. Very often we're very respectful to our bosses at work. Right? Oh, sorry, I'm running late. Oh, guys, I have to leave. I have to make that meeting. But with the people we say we love the most, very disrespectful. Does that make sense? Okay. So you can apply this in all of life. I'm consistently respectful towards others. This is actually one of the behaviors that builds trust. There's a time in my life where someone was lying about me. And this person had a lying problem, right? And he also had an issue with violence. And I basically said to him, you're not welcome around, it was a particular area, particular space. So as a leader, I basically said, you're not welcome because of your violence. And I had to challenge him around his lying. And then he went and he lied about me, right? After that, okay. But the point I'm making is this. When he made up this lie, it was something to do with Paul came, he saw me and so at a particular mall. And he basically made up a story about something I'd said to them. The people who came and gave me the feedback, they said, Paul, this is what this guy said to us about you. But we knew that it was not true. And the reason we knew it was not true is we know that you would never speak to someone like that. Does that make sense? So when you're respectful as a person, right, people give you the benefit of the doubt and it builds an atmosphere of trust. The next behavior is this. I determine how I behave towards others. This is an interesting one because many of us, we stoop to someone else's level. Have you noticed that? You know what? You tune me rough, I cut you smooth, we get into that mode, When I was growing up in Zim, that's how a certain group of people would speak. I'm not going to mention the group, okay? But a certain group of people would speak like that, right? I determine how I behave towards others. So I'm not going to stoop to your level if you start shouting and screaming at me. Does that make sense? Okay? Sometimes people have said to me, oh, Paul, you just reacted calmly in that particular situation. I would have beaten up the person. I would have been so upset. How did you do it? And what I say to them is, I was replaying a video that I had already been playing over and over again before I attended that meeting. What am I talking about? You know that in sport, my wife does triathlons, and her coach says to her, you must visualize not just the positive stuff, but visualize the pain. Visualize yourself as you are running and experiencing pain, pushing through the pain. Does that make sense? And it's the same with us every day when we come to work. You can see that situation where this person is speaking in a nasty way to you. How do you see yourself responding? You see, many of us, what we do is we stoop down to some person's level. So people say, well, why are you consistently polite and respectful? Because that's who I am. And I'm not going to allow someone else's weakness to control my emotional state. Does that make sense? That's what powerful people do. That's what powerful people do. Okay? So I determine how I behave towards others. So do you have a standard? Gentlemen in this room, do you have a standard in terms of how you treat females? You get what I'm saying? No, because in a lot of workplaces, a lot of people don't understand what sexual harassment is. Sexual harassment is not just what we typically call sexual harassment. When you actually study it, you actually see, I don't know if you've been to any of the workshops around that, right? But a lot of times it's also to do with the types of jokes men can crack in the presence of women. And the other way around too. You know, nowadays it also happens the other way around, right? No, seriously. Often when I counsel couples and I deal with things like wife beating, okay, and we call it wife beating, but I realized that, you know what, it's really domestic violence because often it's the other way around. The more I started counseling people and so on, I started realizing, I remember counseling a particular couple, and in terms of size, the guy was quite a skinny sort of guy and so on. They'd come from out of town for a counseling session with me, and the lady was quite large framed, okay? And no, I'm not saying that in a horrible way. She was a large woman, not fat, she was large. Strong looking, okay? And then they started sharing with me that, yeah, and Paul, sometimes it gets physical. Then I looked. And then I said, and we laughed about it. And I said, okay, who wins, you know? And the guy just said, well, you can see, you know? But the point I'm making is, when it comes to sexual harassment in the workplace, for example, both men and women, we have to have standards. How do we communicate to each other? How do we relate? What jokes are appropriate in the presence of someone else? Does that make sense? All right? So I determine it because I'm a person of standards. I'm shocked how a lot of people do all sorts of dubious stuff simply because they didn't pre-decide not to do it, because they didn't have a standard. Okay? The influence and impact I have on the world is bigger than the world has on me. This is a powerful one. This is a powerful one. I've shared with you before that very often the way I live my life is I can be crawling in traffic, going at 5 k's an hour, going to a client. It's out of my control. There are no side roads. You know when you're stuck and it's gridlocked and you're on the highway, there are no side roads to escape on. But I've already decided I'm a joyful person and I'm not going to let the traffic affect my mood. You can do that. Athletes do that all the time. They condition themselves emotionally. Yet most people, what happens? The moment they go into the open plan scenario, what do they say? What mood is the boss in today? Or is the boss around today? Is he in Rosebank? Is he here? Where is he? And if you're told the boss is in a bad mood, what happens? Everyone is treading on eggshells. Why? I still remember an individual I was coaching in a particular bank, and they came to me and they said, Paul, I just need help. My team is so negative, and I have to have lunch with them every day. Wrong answer. I said, number one, you don't have to have lunch with them. Who said? You've created a debilitating rule for yourself that's now draining you because you feel like you have to have lunch with your team every single day. Okay? So I said, you don't have to have lunch with them all the time. But if you do want to have lunch with them and they're negative, change the direction of the conversation. Here you are, you want to change your industry, you want to change the world, but you can't shape the direction of a conversation. There's something wrong with that. That's not leadership. Does that make sense? And here's the thing about being dynamic. It's that force that can change a system. Make sense? It's that force that can change the system, right? So the influence and impact that I have on the world is bigger than the world has on me. I was chatting to someone yesterday, someone that I mentor, and they said to me, they were wondering whether they should live in, I won't mention the city's name, another city in South Africa, or whether they should live in Joburg, right? Or, Gauteng. And they were talking about the pros and cons. And they said to me, but Paul, you know what? The problem with this environment, and they started talking about the environment here. And I said to them, but you can lead and change the environment. Can you see the leadership mindset that kicks in? When you're a dynamic leader, you're thinking in terms of that. And the person was quick to say to me, you're right. I can actually lead and shape the environment. And because I lead that person in a certain context, I said, I've given you opportunity. He said, you've been so right, Paul. You have given me opportunity. All right? So sometimes we tend to complain a lot about the environment when we should actually be change agents that can shape our environment. Who's going to change it? There are things you might not like in your team. Who's going to change it? Yours truly. No, but Paul, you must understand, some of us here, the culture is different. Who's going to change the culture? Culture is created. And people often say that to me. I'll give them advice, maybe before they get married or something like that. And, I'll say, do A, B, C, D. And then they do the opposite. And they come back to me a few weeks later. And I said, why did you come to me for premarital counseling? You're doing the opposite. Yeah, because my auntie said this, Paul, because in my culture, why don't you just change how you do things in your family? You're clearly not a leader. No, Paul, but as a daughter-in-law, I couldn't. No, you preferred the acceptance from your family more than the standards you've set for yourself. Simple as that. And that's why when we spoke about be bold, be fearless, be you, we spoke about how the fear of rejection is one of the biggest fears that people have, one of the most common fears that people have. Okay? Often when I work with people, I have to say, what's working in your culture that you want to keep? Cool. What doesn't work in your culture that you don't want to keep? Chuck it out. You create your own standards. That's what powerful people do. All right? I'm effective at influencing people that don't report to me. This is the challenge, isn't it? Often when people come to me for coaching, that's the essence of what they're asking. They're saying, Paul, how do I influence people that don't report to me? Paul, I'm fine with my team. I determine their bonuses to some extent. Okay? I know there are moderations and there are all those other things. But Paul, they listen to me. But how do I get that team over there, right, to have the same priorities as me? And one of the key ways of doing it, find out what your power base is. Find out what your power base is. Ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing wrong with power. Power is A's ability to make B do something B would otherwise not have done. That's what power is. Say to the person next to you, I'm powerful. Now, do you know why you pack out laughing? Do you know why you pack out laughing? You pack out laughing because you're not comfortable with power. Often what happens is that we associate power with the abuse of power. So if someone says, I'm powerful, we think they're being arrogant. They're not being arrogant. They're just acknowledging what they have. All right? Just think about it. If I say to you, I didn't have power last night, okay? If you're a kind, caring, reasonable human being, you would be like, oh, Paul, you didn't have power, you didn't have power. So we're fine with power when it comes to ESCOM, right? But when we're talking about being a powerful person, what happens? We're not comfortable with it, right? Now, here's the thing about power. So I said to you, power is A's ability to make B do something B would otherwise not have done, right? And when power is exerted, it becomes influence, right? But what's your power base? What's your source of power? Because we know that there's some people who are more powerful than other people, right? So what's your power base? And there are different sources of power, and I've shared this with some of you before, right? Expert power. What is expert power? It's power you have because of what you know, right? Because of what you know. There are a lot of youngsters today, but you sit down and you listen to them. They're 20 years younger than you, but you sit down and you listen to them because of what they know. And here's the principle. It's a life principle, a universal principle, right? You get what you appreciate. You get what you honor. So if you are clued up in IT. How many of you are clued up in IT? Let's say Derek, right? Clued up in IT, right? If I just think to myself, oh, let me just talk my leadership stuff, and I don't take time to sit down and listen to what he has to say about IT, guess what? If you only get what you honor. If you want to become wealthy, but you're always dissing the people who are wealthy, you won't become wealthy. If you want to become wealthy, sit down, keep quiet, listen. Just look and listen and ask them, what are some of the keys to your success? Does that make sense? Okay, that's how you become successful. So you get what you honor. So expert power is one of them. Expert power is one of them. But the interesting thing about expert power is that it's relative. Have you noticed that? It's relative. So you go to your rural home, those of you with rural homes, I know there's some of you, right? You go to your rural home and you show your great uncle how to switch on a computer. You'll think, oh, my daughter, my granddaughter, she must be an IT expert. But when you're sitting with your IT friends, you know you must just look, listen, and keep quiet and sit down. Okay? So remember, expert power is relative, right? You might be an expert to some people, and then you do a lot of the talking. But you know that when you're in another environment, you must sit down, listen, and learn. That's expert power, very powerful. Another source of power is positional power. And many people have got positional power. That's the power you have simply because of your position. Could be your leadership position. But it's not good to rely on positional power. What happens if there's restructuring in an organization? The power goes. What happens if they decide, we're not going to use this title anymore, we're going to use this title? Now you no longer have a title. Often when I go and I do my workshops and so on, and I'm asking people to introduce themselves, you hear some people, they'll just say, my name is Dave and I'm in IT. Then you hear other people, my name is Frank and I'm the senior, not the junior, the senior, whatever it is, okay? Positional power, very important for them. The kind of people who will say, how come my office is 4x3 and theirs is 7x8? It's not fair, it's not fair. And that's the song you hear them singing the whole time in their career. That's positional power. Not a good source of power, but we still respect it. Why? The people with positional power have signing powers, don't they? Okay? So we still have to respect it. The other source of power is a power source called referent power. Referent power. Referent power is power that you have simply because people admire you. So for example, if Bill Gates, if we heard that Bill Gates is in town tonight and he's giving a talk on how to make champions out of your kids, people will go. Even some Apple people go just because it's Bill Gates, right? We don't know what he's like as a dad, but people will just go. And that's called referent power. It's where you've been successful in one sphere and it gives you influence in another sphere. And some of you have it, where people will ask for your opinion or your wisdom on a matter where you know deep down inside you're not trained in that area, right? You're not trained in that area, but people will still ask you questions. Why? Because you've been successful in another sphere. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's called, what type of power is that? That's called referent power. It's referent power. What's that noise? That's referent power. That's referent power. Then we also have what we call personal power. Personal power is what Nelson Mandela had. Nelson Mandela had personal power. Personal power is power that you have because of your moral authority. Your moral authority. Okay, guys. So as I said to you, what's happening is that a lot of us don't use the power that we actually have. We're not actually conscious of it, right? So I asked you that question, how dynamic are you? Are you that force that can bring about change, that can challenge the status quo? Or do you find yourself being fatalistic? What is the general sense? What is the general sense? Are we powerful or are we not powerful? Okay. It depends on the environment. Okay, it depends on the environment. Have we sometimes given the environment too much power then? Okay, sometimes we have. Sometimes we have. And I want to say this to you. One of the things about power is that it can actually be shared. The mistake a lot of people make is they don't realize that power has no zero base. You see, when you think power has a zero base, what you tend to do is, if I've got 10 units of power and you've got 0 units, I don't want to share that with you, right? My mindset is, if I give you 2, I'm down to 8, and you're up to 2. Then I give you another 2, you're up to 4, and I'm down to 6. I can't give you another 2 because now you'll be equal to me, right? That's our mindset. But there's what's known as the reciprocal nature of power, right? I empower you to empower me to empower you. And people who are dynamic as leaders, they tend to do that. They're very generous in that way, and we'll get onto that just now. So the key learning point here is they're different sources of power, right? Referent power, that's power that people give you because they admire you. There's positional power, not always great to function on that. Then there's personal power. Nelson Mandela had that. He continued to influence and to lead even after he was president, okay? It's power you have because of your moral authority, right? That badge no one can actually see, but they trust you because of it, all right? There's expert power, and we say that expert power is relative. That's fine. Expert power is relative, all right? You guys can all hear me, right? I don't need a mic, cool. Expert power is relative. Right? And we spoke a bit about that. And the nice thing about it is power is not static. So you can actually grow your expert power, can't you? By learning more. I have to say to myself, am I worth more to my clients this year than I was last year? How do I increase my worth to them? I'm in the knowledge industry. I have to learn more about leadership, about EQ, the stuff that I do. All right? So power is an interesting dynamic. There's even what we call socialized power. That's power you have because of who you know. You know those people where it's like, hey, don't mess with that person. His uncle is the so-and-so, right? That's social power that we actually have. And there's nothing wrong with it as long as we use it legitimately, all right? As long as we use it legitimately. A lot of people don't realize that money isn't the only currency, you know? You know that relationships, that's a currency. That's a currency. There's a lot of stuff I have that I didn't pay a cent for, right? But I have because of relationship. Does that make sense? Okay? I've got it because of relationship. All my suits, all these nice suits you guys see me wearing and so on. You know, nowadays I don't pay for my suits. You see, some of you are like, because that's your only model, right? But I train guys, I train entrepreneurs who own shops, menswear, who are in that industry. And they can't afford me, so we just have a barter arrangement. Guys, come, let me come and just train you. And for me, it's not difficult, right? Let me just do some training, let me coach you guys and so on. And in lieu of that, I can choose whatever I want. I just get whatever I want. I'm just trying to get you to think outside the box in terms of currency, you see. So relationships are currency, right? The relationships you have. If you're an asset-based thinker, your mindset is very strong in terms of your relational assets. So you know, you're conscious of the relationships around you and you actually leverage off those relationships. If you're a deficit-based thinker, you don't even think in terms of that, right? Ever spoken to someone where they're there and they're working so hard and they're stuck with Excel for 2 hours or so? I've shared with you this before, I think, right? And then you come to them and you just basically say, but you're stuck for 2 hours, but you told me last week that your uncle is an Excel expert and he likes you. Oh, okay, let me contact them. Can you see what's happening? That person is a deficit-based thinker. Deficit-based thinkers are more conscious of protecting themselves from danger than they are of opportunity. Asset-based thinkers are more conscious of opportunity than calamity. So you're an asset-based thinker reminding this person of the relational assets that they have around them. Does that make sense? Okay, so so it's very important understanding this. And when you leverage off your power base, it's amazing how you can influence people that don't report to you, okay? One of the key ways of doing this is establishing rapport with another human being, establishing rapport. Many of us, we don't struggle having a conversation with someone. We struggle with breaking the ice. And if you can master this, it takes you places in terms of influencing people that don't report to you. Just establishing rapport. One of the key behaviors of a person who establishes rapport, you find common ground. You find common ground. So have you noticed that some of you in this room, some of you are very good at that. You're able to find common ground. Some of you struggle with that, you see. And these are things that can be learned. Some of you say, but that's not my personality. If you study the science of success, people who become successful, they don't have a fixed mindset. They have a growth mindset. What's the difference? A growth mindset is, you know what, I'm trying to learn to play the guitar, but I'm getting stuck. Let me find out how I can create steps to overcome the obstacles. A fixed mindset is, hey, yeah, this thing is difficult. I don't think I'm cut out for music. Does that make sense? My wife plays 3 instruments, piano, guitar, and cello. She only learned the cello when she was about 31, right? She only started the cello then, like full on. She had one of the top cellists on the continent, a Russian lady, Polina, teaching her. And I remember she came to me one day and she said to me, my love, you know what? I'm going to start recording my lessons with Polina. I'm going to start recording my lessons. I'm going to take my iPhone there and I'm going to record my lessons. I said, you know what? You've got a growth mindset. It's sometimes known as an incremental mindset. Okay? Because what you're doing is you're saying, as I get stuck here, right? I'm going to come up with something that can take me to my next level. So she was literally multiplying her sessions. She wasn't just going and getting input, but she was recording them. And then when she was practicing every day, she could be listening to what Polina had said in the previous practice. If you study research around people who become successful, they've got a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. Okay? So I'm effective at influencing people that don't report to me. And the higher up you go in an organization, the more you need this skill, don't you? Because now you're dealing with people who are just as smart as you or even smarter. If someone is CEO, they're a smart CEO if they hire people that are smarter than them. So it becomes difficult to influence people that think they know more than you, or that do know more than you and they know that they know more than you. And that's why the higher up you go, you actually find that a lot of leaders aren't good with feedback. They don't know how to give feedback. Because it's easy to say to someone who's just swept the floor, hey, there's some dust here. Can you sweep it again? It's more difficult when you're dealing with very subjective decision making and you've hired someone who's the best in the industry and they report to you. And now you have to have a conversation with them and give them feedback even though they're an expert in their field. And often a lot of experts get defensive because they're like, but you hired me because I'm clued up and I'm telling you this is how we must do it. But somehow you've got that instinct, that leadership instinct that should say, I know that's how you did it in your previous workplace, but this is how I would like it. Not easy. That's why in a lot of organizations today, a lot of people aren't actually given feedback. They're just redeployed. Seriously, you see it happening in a lot of organizations. All of a sudden you find someone over there, and then they're now seconded to this place, seconded to that place. And because I coach a lot of people, I have conversations with them. And I'll speak to the leader, and he'll tell me what he really thinks about that individual. Then I'll speak to the individual, and they'll say, yeah, this environment is not great, you know. What I liked about that old boss of mine is he really trusted me. And I'm thinking, I had conversations with that person. and based on what they've told me, dude, you don't got it. You know what I mean? I'm wanting to say to the person, dude, you don't got it. But I can't because of confidentiality. And I'm thinking this person was never given feedback. I'm not talking about your organization, okay? I'm actually thinking of a scenario in a pharmaceutical that I've done some work for. But if the shoe fits, please just wear it, okay? All right. People like doing things in order to assist me. This is the mark of a dynamic leader. How many of you can safely say, Paul, this is true for me. People actually like doing stuff for me. They enjoy doing stuff for me. It's what we call favor. When you have favor with someone, they actually love doing stuff for you. How many of you can say that? It's where literally people will literally press pause on their schedule, on everything else, just to help you out. How many of you can say that? This is one of the marks of a dynamic person. Okay, so let me give you a quick tip. One of the ways, why would people do that? I did something for someone recently, and the person was like, thank you, Paul, can I pay you? Can I do this? And I'm thinking, no. And you know what I was thinking in my mind? I was thinking, you're always doing stuff for a lot of people. So it's so easy for me to do stuff for you. Have you noticed that? And when you're that kind of person where people know you're generous, you go the extra mile, you're dynamic in that way, you're kind-hearted, we'll touch on that a bit later, somehow they will press pause on whatever they're doing and they want to do stuff for you. We all know there's certain people, they're very smart in this organization, very clued up, but you don't feel like doing stuff for them. And you know why you don't feel like doing stuff for them? It's because you know that their life is just about just about them. They've kind of got that thing. They're very ambitious. But you know that they want to climb that corporate ladder like yesterday. And they don't care who they trample on to get there. So when they ask you to do something, you've got this knee-jerk reaction of, I don't know. But then there are other people who are team players. There are other people who are team players. They go the extra mile for everyone. They're dynamic that way, even though they're not even going to get any credit for it. When they're stuck, you want to help them, don't you? So be that person. Be that person. All right? I intuitively understand the political climate of my organization. One of the leadership dimensions, in other words, a quality that makes someone a great leader, is actually this. It's what we call cultural and political awareness. Ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing wrong with politics. There's nothing wrong with it. I know some people say, oh, but the politics, Paul, the politics. You have positive politics that's legitimate, and you have illegitimate politics in an organization. Politics is basically the management of power. Politics is getting things done by unsanctioned means. I didn't say illegal means, unsanctioned means. Politics is where you can literally say, okay, guys, we've got this meeting coming up. I think we better invite Sham to this meeting because he'll be able to, he's got so-and-so's ear, and I think we need to have him in the meeting. There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, guys, we've got this meeting. I think we need Sipo in this meeting, yeah, because she won't be afraid to go and challenge those people about this and this and this and so on. Yeah, I think we should have her in the meeting. You hearing what I'm saying? Okay? Politics is this. You delegate something to someone, and then you say, but you know what? I'm not going to leave you in the deep end. Let me make a few phone calls. I'll just be your buffer on this one. Hey, guys, I've got my guy coming out. It's his first time doing this. Yeah, he's quite sensitive and so on. Please, guys, he's really, he's brilliant in this organization, hey? Yeah, just make it easy for him. You know that you've just managed politics there. You see? And I know some of you like everything black and white, and you're like, yeah, but my work should just speak for itself. Yeah, this personal branding stuff, Paul, that you keep talking about. Well, the fact of the matter is people buy from brands they like. People buy from brands they have an emotional connection with. People buy from brands they trust. And sometimes when you want to sell an idea, you have to actually say, guys, I know you did the work and so on, but you're not the best person to sell it. And that person should have enough in humility to actually say, yeah, you know what, guys, I'm very good at building systems and so on, but I'm not good at selling ideas. I think that these people have got so-and-so's ear. He better sell the idea. Does that make sense? Okay, when you understand those nuances in organizations, you go places. But if you're the kind of person who wants the glory and you want to take credit for everything and you're like, it's my work, so I will present it, then you get up there and you're now trying to present your project. But you struggle now and you're freezing like this. And then the project doesn't fly. Not because it wasn't great, but it was the wrong person selling it. That's why organizations will have someone in product development, and it's not the same person who's doing the marketing, and it's not the same person who's doing the selling, and it's not the same person who's doing the account management. I know there's some people who are brilliant, and I know some of you think you're that, where you do everything. That's fine, it's cool, good for you. But most of us, we're talented in some things, but we know where we're not talented, and we work in teams to get the best. Does that make sense? Okay? Dynamic people understand that. You see, the mark of maturity is not independence. Many people think, I'm independent. I don't need anyone. There's no self-made man. I know a lot of people think they're a self-made man, but you always need other people. You always need other people. Simple as that. Does someone want to clap?
I think so.
Oh, you can clap on that one. You can clap on that one. You see how I'm so positive, you know? Other people will be like, what dropped? What, did you just drop something? Did you drop a book or something? I'm like, do you want to clap? You can clap, okay? But the point is, it is a very important point. When a child starts out, the child is very dependent on mom and dad, right? Give me, mommy, I want this milk. Can I have some milk, please? Okay, usually they're not yet talking, right, when they want milk. But anyway, they're crying, right? So they're dependent. And then later on, when they're a teenager, what happens? They assert their independence. Mom, I'm 18, I can do it myself. Stop babying me. Is that maturity? It's not maturity. As they grow older, they become interdependent, right? And they'll say, oh, Elaine, can you just explain to me this, please, in your field? I just need, what's happening with the branches? I just want to understand, how does that work? Then Elaine says, Paul, can you just explain this to me? And we're interdependent. That's the mark of maturity. All right? I intuitively understand the political climate of my organization. Do you understand the politics of your organization? Are you able to figure out that, oh, my boss is stressed out right now, so when he spoke to me like this, it's not just because of me, so I mustn't take it personally. It's actually because he's going through A, B, C, D, because he's just been in that meeting and I think something funny happened in that meeting. Something went down. Right? I know where to go to expedite things at work. Do you know who's who in the zoo? Do you know who to go to? Come on, who are some of the movers and shakers amongst you? What? I'm just hearing sounds. Right? Do you know who to go to fast track things? Do you know who to speak to make things happen? You know what the problem is with our organizations today? One of the biggest time wasters is having meetings where the decision makers are not present. So you sit down and you have a meeting, and then you have to have another meeting a few days later when the decision makers are now there. Why didn't you just cancel the other meeting? Okay? Or sometimes we waste a lot of time because we'll have a meeting, but we didn't have to have a meeting. Because that meeting was useless because the decision maker wasn't present. All we needed to do is just give a phone call to the decision maker and just say, hey, listen, this is the thing. And maybe you then end up having a meeting just to ratify the decision. Sometimes we have useless meetings and no decisions are made. Let's be honest. Okay? Are you humble enough to go to the right people? Are you humble enough to go to the right people? Some people aren't. Sometimes we live parallel lives in organizations. You know, when you've been burnt before in an organization, sometimes you end up having a mindset of, you know what, I know for data I need to go to person X, but hey, I've got issues with him, so I'm just going to go to these guys who aren't that good, but I'll just use them. And you literally end up like two ships passing each other by, and you never go to the person who can actually expedite things. Are you going to the right people? Okay, just think about it. I often invite myself to relevant meetings, even if I have not been formally invited. This is an art. I know most of us are meetinged out, so we're not looking for more meetings to go to. And that's why I said relevant meetings. Relevant meetings. Why? It's a skill. It's a skill. It's actually called a radial move. A radial move is where you're able to invite yourself into the inner circle or be invited to the inner circle. That's a radial move. You know, you have vertical moves in organizations, right? When you move up a grade or two. And then you have lateral moves where you move sideways, same grade. You have radial moves where you're an outsider, but you're now an insider, right? So someone will say to you, for example, please can you come to that conference with us? We need you there because you'll be able to answer the questions that I can't answer. Imagine your boss says that to you, and you find yourself in all these meetings that you were never in before. That's when someone else has initiated a radial move for you. But other times you can initiate that move. It's where you say, guys, you know what? After your big, high-powered meetings, you ask me to do A, B, C, D for you, but then it takes about 5 days. Don't you think it's better I use my writing skills and my integrating skills to actually go into the meeting and actually have a conversation with you guys there, and then you get it real time. You get the integrated report real time. You've just invited yourself into a meeting you hadn't been invited to, but you're not going in as a gate crusher. You know, gate crushers, when they go to meetings, they go as takers. You're going as a giver. You're going in and you're adding value. And what you do is you under-promise and over-deliver. What do I mean by that? You go into that meeting and you say, guys, you know what, by tomorrow you should have it. But then you work really, really hard and you make sure in the next 2 hours they've got it. You know one of the quickest ways of building trust with another human being? Make a promise that you know you will keep. When I make a promise, it ignites hope, doesn't it? When I fulfill that promise, it builds trust. One of the quickest ways. And remember, people buy from people they trust. Think about it. That restaurant you always go to on the weekends during the holiday, is it the best in the country? Has it won all the awards? It hasn't. But it's the one you like. It's the one you trust. It's the one you have an emotional connection with. Same thing in business. That's what people do. Okay? I enjoy leading and influencing people from a variety of backgrounds. This is an interesting one. Men in this room, how many of you are good with women in terms of leading women? I'm talking leadership. Okay? Derek's hand is up. We'll ask her. Okay. Okay. Right. Ladies, how many of you are good at leading men? I'm talking influencing. Hey, guys, I'm talking influencing. How many of you are good at influencing people that are from a different academic background? I've had situations where people say, yeah, no, Paul, because they're not CAs, they don't really understand these things. Yeah, but at least the CAs understand. And I'm thinking, if you're a leader, you must be able to influence beyond your academic background. And I've said this to you before. The thing is, in South Africa and on the African continent, our education system is very linear, very sequential. If someone studies accounting, that's all they study, numbers, right? If someone studies engineering, that's all they do. But the reality is there's other things that we need. We're not like Australia. In Australia, they do double degrees. So in Australia, you can do a BCom in pharmacy. And in real life, that's what we need. So I've coached a lot of people in the pharmaceutical world, and they'll say to me, Paul, yes, I'm a scientist. I studied microbiology, but I'm now doing my MBA, because that's what they actually need. I was challenging a group of engineers, guys from Murray and Roberts, Conco. I was challenging them a number of years, and I said, how many of you, when you're studying engineering, did a course on how to manage your boss? No. How many of you deal with that on a day-to-day basis? Yes. I said to them, how many of you, when you were studying engineering, did a course on how to manage corporate politics? No. How many of you deal with that on a day-to-day basis? Yes. I'm blown away when I speak to people from the States who come from different backgrounds, the opposite of me, very scientific, hardcore science, but they're very clued up about EQ. I'm like, where did you learn that? It's the education system there. It's much broader. It goes from broad to specific. Does that make sense? So that's why we're finding in the workplace today, many people who've come from strong academic backgrounds now have to literally start learning about EQ, about managing people, about the science of success, about personal mastery, right? About the social sciences, right? Are you good at influencing people from a variety of backgrounds? How many of you are good at influencing people that are from a different ethnic group, different ethnicity? I know in this country, everyone wants to say, yes, oh, I'm so diverse, diversity and inclusion, yeah, and so on. But if we're honest with ourselves, in the comfort of our own closets, that's when people are like, hey, I struggle with those people. You see? But the thing is, you have to be able to lead beyond your own tribal group. Some people will say, yeah, but Paul, in my culture, do you want your business to go global? Do you want to function with the Germans? Do you understand how the Chinese function? One of my seminars, we'll do it at some point, hopefully, is on cross-cultural agility. Right? Because not everyone is from your culture. I was shocked the one day, there was a guy in one of my things at a particular organization, one of my talks. I said, guys, can you just talk about your communication do's and don'ts? And as we were talking, one of the things this guy said was eye contact. So I knew everyone would be assuming that was a communication do. That's what he wants. But he actually was saying, I don't want you guys to look at me directly. Right? And this was the guy, and there were certain things about him and so on, and maybe there were certain insecurities, etc. But he struggled when everyone would just like look at him with piercing eyes like that. So for him, he didn't want that. But for most of us, that's what we want. You see? So it's important to understand, how are people different and how should I adapt in order to influence them? Remember, we're talking about influence here. Okay? I'm a great communicator who can get through to any subgroup of people. What are we talking about here? Are you able to adjust your style in order to suit your audience? So am I able to speak this exact same talk, but at a high school? There are talks I've done for corporates, the same talk. And then I'm called to do a school assembly. Remember one time I had to do multiple school assemblies and so on, and I went there and I had to adjust it. There are times when people say, can you speak on such and such a topic, Paul? But some of the people you're going to talk to are semi-literate. Can you adjust? One of the marks of a great teacher is to take complex things and explain them to people without making the people feel stupid. It's a gift, isn't it? And some of you are brilliant at it. I don't know if it was in this environment, but I was coaching someone and they were explaining to me certain things about their industry. I'm trying to learn the different industries where I coach people so I can be more relevant. And I remember saying, I think you've got a teaching gift. I remember it was at a research company. Yeah. I said, I think you've got a teaching gift, because they were taking complex things and they were breaking them down. And I was like, I get it. I get it. It makes sense. It's not rocket science. But there's some people who are very smart. And what do? They want to show their smartness. So they look for the most difficult jargon. There's a guy at the Reserve Bank, one of the leaders there. If you're doing a presentation for him, he says, no jargon. This is an in-house thing that they do there. And he basically says, no jargon. If you use jargon, I'll give you a yellow card. And if you use jargon a second time, I'll give you a red card. He says that to the guys there when they're presenting. You see? So dynamic leaders are able to break down complex things and make them simple and easy for people to understand. They're not trying to show off their knowledge. Not trying to show off their knowledge. Some of the stuff that I explain here and so on, we could sit and I could go deep into the psychology of it. But that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to actually say, what do you guys need right now? Does that make sense? Okay? Even in terms of dress code, are you able to get through to any subgroup of people? If I'm doing work at Reserve Bank, if I'm doing work here at some of the main banks, if I'm doing work with some of the, let's say, City of Tshwane or something like that, I'll wear the three-piece suit. I'll dress up smartly. One of my main clients is Nando's. They're in jeans there. When I go to Nando's, I dress down. When I go to Outsurance, I dress down. When I go to Momentum, dress down. Does that make sense? Okay? Are you able to adjust? Or are you the kind of person who just says, no, I have to wear my heels. I have to. It's just me. It's my brand. Your brand is not for you. Your brand is not for you. Your brand is about influencing people. Does that make sense? Unless you don't want to sell to them. I know some people who often have to go into the rural areas. That's just where their job takes them. Right? And they'll literally adjust when they're going out into the rural areas. As opposed to there, all the heels are there, everything overly done. Wrong context. Part of being a dynamic person is to do with change. When we talk about something being dynamic, we say, is this team dynamic? Is this organization dynamic? One of the key things in the definition of being dynamic is agility. Does it change when it needs to? A lot of people are too rigid. Okay? Some research has been carried out on why leaders fail. And guess what the two top things are? Failure to build strong relationships. So if you can't build strong relationships, that's already, if we're to do insurance on whether you'll succeed or not as a leader, you're already high risk. Failure to build strong relationships. And guess what the second one is? Too rigid. Too rigid. So I can tell if I'm coaching a leader and I see that they're very rigid as a person, I can already tell that, okay, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be work. This person is not flexible enough. They'll only be able to lead this group of people, but not this group of people, not anything wider. I like to include and enroll others in my initiatives. This is a biggie. I said to you earlier on, you won't be successful by yourself. You won't be successful by yourself. The guy who heads Outsurance today. It's interesting when you hear his story. I was speaking to some actuaries from there, and they've literally done research on the guy. In 2000, that's when the guy joined Outsurance from Auto in General. He wasn't from some fancy family and so on. He had about 6 siblings, right? By January 2013, I think it was, he was appointed CEO of UE, which is their organization in Australasia. with 800 people under him. And now the guy's now been made CEO of the group, of the organization here. And I was thinking to myself, what are the keys to his success? Guess what the guys told me? They literally did research on the guy. They said, you know what? He was able to do this, to include and enroll others into his initiatives. The mark of his greatness was his ability to create teams with smart people that would help to achieve his goals. That's what he did. How many of you here are good at roping people into your initiatives? Where there are people from other teams and they want to work with you. They always come and say, oh, can we do this? Oh, what project are you doing? We want to be involved in it. People that don't even report to you officially, they want to be involved in your initiatives. Just raise your hand, because that means you're dynamic. Some of you only raise your hands when I explain what it means. It means you're dynamic. Oh, okay. Do you guys just generally don't like raising your hands? You're concerned that people might think that I think I'm it. I know the fears. I'll raise my hand and everyone will be just thinking, girl, you ain't all that. All right? I like to include and enroll others in my initiatives. Do you know that there's actually a psychological instrument? It's called FIRO-B, F-I-R-O-B, right? That measures this. Some people are high includers. I'm a high includer. I include people into my world. I'm always telling them stories about, then this happened, then this. Sometimes it's overshare, right? Other people have a low need to include people. So but sadly, they become isolated. Okay? Some people have a high need to be included. You know those people? FOMO. What about me? You're like, come on. I don't have a high need to be included. So I'm happy when people don't invite me to functions. How many of you are like that? It's like you can. Now, I'm very extroverted. Like my sunshine yellow is like on about 97%. But I've got a low need for inclusion. Because I'm extremely busy, I'm like, whew. It's like at least. But other people are like, why didn't they invite us? How come I was the last one to know? I was an afterthought. And I'm thinking, girl, you're so busy. Just rest. You need a weekend off. Why do you want to be invited to everything? Some people are high on that. Okay? Let me just explain something to you. This is linked to the science of likability. Some research I'm doing around being liked. Because people do business with people they like. Simple as that. Very often people will promote you because they like you. We think it's a very rational process and so on. But when they have the discussions, I promise you, they're sitting down and they're saying, hey, but this person will clash with so-and-so. I have to be careful what I say here, because often when I use the example, I actually say Joe, but in the generic Joe. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Hey, Joe, this person will clash with Joe over here, but now I know it's, I can't say that here. But I could be meaning any Joe, right? The number of Joannes, right? But the point is, if you study the science of likability, we tend to like people who share with us their stuff. We tend to like people who will share a secret with us. And the converse is true. We tend to like people who will maintain the confidentiality. So if you don't have stuff that's confidential, that's personal, that you've shared with someone, like on your team and so on, I'm not saying they'll hate you. All I'm just saying is what helps people to like you is where you make yourself vulnerable and you say, hey, this is what I actually went through in my life. At a psychological level, people are more likely to like you. And I'm not saying share all your stuff with everyone, please. What's one of the marks of great friendships? Think about the person that's your best friend, that you like a lot. They know your stuff. Elaine, does Joanne know your stuff?
I know all her stuff.
You know all her stuff. Okay? But when you've got a friendship between two people, one of the things that actually bonds you and builds the friendship, it's actually when you're able to share stuff. And let me say something else. Have you noticed what happens when you share stuff with someone and they never share with you? After a while, you're like, You know what? There's a problem here in terms of mutuality. It's something we always look for in relationships, mutuality. It's like, okay, I trust you, but you don't seem to trust me. There's something wrong here. Okay? So just think about that. Let me give you one more and then we'll break for tea. I understand and am fascinated by the cultural nuances of diverse groups. Very often we will avoid someone or something or a group of people because we don't understand it. We tend to avoid that which we don't understand. Have you noticed that? Especially those of us who are achievers and we like to feel competent. And the moment we go into an environment where we don't fully understand, ooh, what are these practices? What are these guys doing? Even language-wise, what are they saying? Are they talking about me? What's going on? We'll tend to avoid it. And then we tend to be afraid of that which we don't understand. So we'll avoid it because we don't understand it, and then we tend to fear that which we've avoided. Does that make sense? Okay? So knowledge empowers you. And when it comes to culture and diversity, one of the ways of breaking your fear over a particular group is just trying to understand it. Does that make sense? Just trying to understand it. Okay. So how many of you are good at this? How many of you are good at understanding the cultural nuances of diverse groups? It fascinates you. You like to learn about it. You might not agree with it. Remember, learning about something doesn't mean you agree with it. It's just that I can lead you better if I understand you, right? And if I really want to understand you, I have to sit down, keep quiet, listen, learn, and ask you questions. And I think a lot of us as leaders, we have to learn that. Even those of us who talk a lot. I talk a lot, but I also listen a lot. Okay, so you can be a big talker, but also a big listener. Does that make sense? Okay, there are differences in different countries, actually. Let me give you one example. I mean, there's a whole seminar on this, but let me give you one example. You have some cultures that are peach cultures and other cultures that are coconut cultures. What do I mean by that? A peach is hard on the inside and soft on the outside, right? As a fruit. Coconut is hard on the outside, soft on the inside. We've got cultures like that. And if you don't understand that, you can end up being offended. For example, the Americans, they're a peach culture. Why? Soft on the outside. You sit down next to an American on a plane and so on. By the end of your flight, you think you're best friends, right? Hey, man, Paul, we need to hook up. Hey, Paul, really connected. And then afterwards, you're like, what happened? And the Americans even talk about it like out of sight, out of mind. Hey, we connected at such a deep level, partly because of their communication skills and their understanding of, like in terms of self-awareness and all of that. So you connect at a deep level. Then afterwards, oh, what happened? Or sometimes what will happen is when you then think you're part of the inner circle, then you experience the pip. You experience the hard side. But this stranger was connecting with me like we're best friends. And now when we're trying to take things a bit deeper, gridlock, right? That's a peach culture. So don't be disillusioned by it. And I'm not saying every American is like that. When you look at the research on culture, we're talking about norms. Okay, so don't say, I'm American, but I'm not like that. We're talking about norms, okay? Right, on average. The Russians, they're a coconut culture. I'm not talking about coconut like how it's described here, I'm talking about coconut. They're coconut culture. What do I mean by coconut? Hard exterior, and then the accent and everything, right? Hard exterior. But after a while, when you become friends with that individual, they'll go into the fire with you. Okay? Hard on the outside. With some of these people, like you trying to be friendly. Oh, hi, is that your child? Okay, how old are they? And someone just looks at you like, do I know you? There's some cultures like that. And some of you, those of you who've traveled a lot, you know what I'm talking about. You go to some of these places and you think like, oh, this person is so unfriendly. But then you see what they're like with their family and people who are close to them and so on. So that's just one difference. Another difference between cultures is how we view time. Right? It's how we view time. I was doing a wedding. I was doing a wedding in East London, right? Like officiating a wedding in East London. I'm not exaggerating. Wedding was supposed to start at about 9:30 or 10. Okay? And I knew what I was dealing with, right? The people who were getting married were the same skin color as Spokazi over there. Okay? Right? Right? So here's the thing. So the wedding was supposed to start at, I think it was 9:30, right? Right. So what typically happens is there'll be a few white people at the wedding, right? And they're always like about 10 minutes early. So here I'm doing this wedding and I'm thinking people are going to think it's me delaying things. So I go to the guys and I just say, you know what, guys, please, just seriously go to a restaurant somewhere. It was in a beautiful farming area, had nice hills and so on. So just go to that coffee shop somewhere. Just seriously go. Give me your number and I will call you when things are getting started. Then I had a teleconference. I had a telecon with someone that I was supposed to have. I made use of the time because I can fight it and try and change everything. Then at a certain point, it's as if there's another group of people who've received a memo that we haven't received. You know what I mean? And so they start arriving. It's like they know something that I don't know. I'm not exaggerating. At 12 noon, that's when, I was standing in front of the people there in the chapel, and that's when the bride walked in, and so on, right? Now here's the thing. That doesn't work in business. Okay? And I've joked with the couple. I'm close to them, and so on. I've joked with them about it. But I was able to adjust my expectation because I knew the context. Okay? There was a time we were doing in the late 90s, we were doing some research in the Amatola Mountains, that deep in the Eastern Cape there, right? We're doing some research there, participatory rural appraisal. And we're having a big debate as researchers. Okay, guys, what time are we going to start the session on day 2? 5 past, 10 past, or 9 o'clock? What time are we going to start? And we're having this big discussion, 10 past or 9 o'clock. And at a certain point, one of the guys, David Neves, he says, guys, I didn't see any of these people with a wristwatch. They don't have a wristwatch. But we're having a big debate about 10 minutes, 5 minutes difference. So we had to adjust when you're in that environment. Okay? I come from Zim, and in Zimbabwe, when the people are talking about when a wedding is going to start, I'm talking now if a wedding is in the rural area. You ask someone, when is the wedding going to start? And they'll say to you in Shona, Kumadzia Zua. Kumadzia Zua is basically when the sun starts getting warm. That's when it's starting. Okay? Okay. All right? No, but the funny thing is people kind of know. It's like they've got this memo. And at a certain point, you just have this crowd coming. Wow. And you're like, huh? What's happening? The point I'm making is African time doesn't work in business. Doesn't really work. Okay? Doesn't actually work in farming either. I've got friends who are training up people how to farm. And they actually have to challenge the cultural mindset. Because if you decide, I know, in 2 weeks' time, we'll start planting. In 2 weeks' time, and so on. Those of you, how many of you are from a farming background? You'll know that it doesn't work. Okay? You have to do things on time. The point I'm making is when you understand why people do various things, some people, their times are circular. Other people, time is linear. And when you really break it down, you're more patient with people. But at the same time, if you're from that cultural background, you're able to say, you know what, I need to adjust a few things here, right? Because if I'm doing business with people from Germany, that's called a low context culture. You have low context cultures, you have high context cultures, right? Low context with the Germans, they don't want you to sit down with them and start asking them about, their grandmother, their grandmother's favorite kitten, and, their granddaughter that broke their toe the other day, before you get down to business. They're like, okay, so let's get down to business. That's a low context culture. High context cultures, the Arab world is high context, right? I remember a friend of mine, he goes to the Arab world, he's got a business partner there, they're doing some work with one of the sheiks, and what happens? His business partner always wants to, he wants to take out the contract. Let's sign. Okay? And this friend of mine who was clued up culturally in terms of the nuances is like, just chill. And this sheik is like, look at my palace here, look at this, look at that, let me show you this, for a couple of days. And at a certain point, the sheik then says I like these guys. You know, go and sign. He says that to one of his minions. Go and you can sign with them. I like them. Same thing happened in Kenya. Guys, and come, let me show you my house. What does he want to do? He's building. That's how he's building rapport. He doesn't want to just sign with you. Right? I remember one time when I was working for a consulting firm, and I was doing business with some people, and we were told we have to sign the contract first. So as a good employee, you know, one of the first things I take out, okay, then we have to sign here. And the guy looks at me, and this was a white South African, but who happened to culturally be high context. The guy was like, Paul, why are you bringing this out? Paul, are you saying we're not friends anymore? Why are you doing this? It's like the guy was offended that I wanted him to quickly sign a contract. I remember, this is not long-term work. This is just like once-off training, like over a few days, okay? So hear me out on this. I know some of the legal people and others are like, Paul, are you sure? You know, are you sure? Right? Understanding that about people. I invite others into my world through my words and conduct. What do we mean by this? There's certain things that cause people to feel welcome in your presence. You know what one of them is? A smile. How many of you are smilers here? Okay, brilliant. Brilliant. Some of you didn't raise your hand, but I know you're smilers. Guys, when you're dynamic, you're quite forceful and energetic and spirited. But one of the things that balances it is the smile. There was a lady, it was my second time meeting her in a particular bank, and I said to her, sure, you're actually a much nicer person than you look. And I know it sounds like I was dissing her, and she understood what I was saying. She understood what I was saying. She said, yeah, no, I've been given that feedback before. Okay? I've been given that feedback before. And it's because of her stern look. And for her, it was actually a defense mechanism. Like she was guarded. And the moment you showed her that, listen, I'm not your enemy, she relaxed. And then you realized her niceness. And I sometimes say to people, don't let people have to wait 6 months before they discover all the nice stuff in you, all the treasure in you. Okay? And guys, a smile, it sounds silly, but just go and Google research around the power of a smile. The power of a smile and the power of making people laugh, getting people to laugh. And you don't have to get people to laugh by cracking a joke. You can just laugh at yourself. You can say something that's self-effacing. The power of doing that is phenomenal. It's very difficult to just go up to someone and feel so welcome if they've got a stern look on their face. You know some people, and for some people it's even the opposite, like they've got an angry look. You know the people I'm talking about. Come on, you've got them in your workplace. And they'll actually be quite happy, like, oh, Paul, good news, yeah, everything is really fine. But they've got this look. And the thing to do, if you struggle with this, the thing to do is to actually practice it. Go in front of the mirror and just, you first stand like this. Seriously, you first just stand like this and you say, okay, yeah, this is what I'm usually like at work. I'm usually like this. Right? And then just go in the mirror and then look at yourself. That's how other people see you. Okay? And it's important for us to be self-aware concerning things like that. But if you study the science of likability, you are more attractive as a person when you smile. And I know people have got complexes. Some people who might not have the greatest teeth and that kind of thing, always keep their mouth closed. I know that people have got complexes, but nowadays we can fix things. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not thinking of anyone or anything and so on. But instead of spending your whole life, like never smiling and so on, just go and sort out the teeth. Just takes 18 months or so, come back out and just be smiling. If you study the science of likability, having straight white teeth and smiling a lot is actually something that attracts people to you. I'm just being honest with you guys, eh? Sometimes we shy away from topics like, ooh, someone might be offended, ooh, but I'd rather tell you the truth. Is that okay? Rather tell you the truth. And even if you don't like your teeth, and you're not going to do anything about them, still smile. It's better than not smiling and having an angry look on your face. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. I like to make room for contributions from other teams and disciplines. I like to make room for contributions from other teams and disciplines. Guys, this is crucial. This is crucial. Okay? Cross-functional teamwork is so important. One of the marks of great teams is seen not in that team being this huddle, like we all get along with each other, we join hands, go for lunch all the time, then we go, right? Because you'll be thinking, cool, we get along with each other. Other people are just looking and they're feeling shut out. So ask yourself, am I in a team that is working well cross-functionally? Now, there's certain teams where the team brand isn't great, the brand of the team. Not just because of the individuals, but even because of the function. So whenever I work with people from internal audit, or sometimes HR, and often procurement, departments that historically are seen as regulatory departments, simply because of their function, people can be like, you're trying to control us. You get what I'm saying, right? And when I work with those teams, I say to them, how can you rebrand yourself so that you're seen as a value-adding division, not a regulatory function? Because you're adding value, aren't you? So how do we carry ourselves? How do we interact cross-functionally? How many of you are part of a team that's not well-liked in the organization? You don't have to raise your hand, okay? But if the brand of your team, if your team's brand is not great, if you're one of those areas that has been blacklisted by your organization, you know, they're always like those departments that have been blacklisted and not liked and so on. I don't think you guys are in that space right now. You know, maybe you were at some stage, right? But let me just say something. If your team has been blacklisted, and if you as an individual don't have a strong personal brand, if you're a no-name brand, and there's nothing wrong with being a no-name brand, it's just a bit cheaper, okay? But if you're a no-name brand, right? If you're a no-name brand, guess what will happen? You will just be swallowed up by the brand of your team. So it's important for anyone who wants to be dynamic to be interested in the brand of the team. You can't just say, as long as I shine, it doesn't matter what happens to the rest of the team. Because this is a team sport, isn't it? If this was a sport, it's a team sport that we're doing. And what's powerful is when people understand this, there's mutual accountability. It's not just, we'll wait for our head, you know, whoever heads up your team, we'll wait for them to rebuke that person over there. No, you're like, come on, you're letting the side down. There's mutual accountability. Okay? I can freely show my weaknesses. I can freely show my weaknesses. People like leaders that can make themselves vulnerable. You see, you cannot build relationally with the people around you in terms of emotional intimacy. You cannot build emotional intimacy without some degree of vulnerability. I coach people, we talk about people's personal lives and so on, and you'll hear people saying, I think I just need to open up more to my spouse. Maybe people who've been hurt before, right? You cannot build emotional intimacy without some degree of vulnerability. And you know what vulnerability does? It's actually one of the keys to getting people to like you. If you study the science of likability, when you make yourself vulnerable, if someone gets up and speaks in front of you as a great leader, for example, you know what you want to hear them saying? You want to hear them saying, me too. You know what I mean? Whatever you're going through, you want to hear them saying, me too. I've been there, but let me tell you how I managed to overcome that situation. That's what you want to hear. You don't want to hear someone just telling you how perfect they are, how wonderful they are, and they were just born special. You know what I mean? You want to hear people saying to you, you know what, I wasn't always here. This is what I used to do, but I used this tool, or I read this book, and now I'm doing what I'm doing. That's what you want to hear. And so I want to encourage you, if you want to be a dynamic leader, ask yourself, how can I make myself vulnerable? You see, the funny thing is, it's almost counterintuitive. We almost feel like if I put my best foot forward, then I'll really be liked. Think about it. Is the person in this organization that you like the most, is it the smartest person? Is it the person who performs the best, the highest performing person? It's not. Who is it? I can tell you right now, the person you like the most is probably a big smiler. It's probably someone who's shared with you certain stuff about themselves and what they're going through. It's probably someone who's made themselves vulnerable. It's probably someone who's also kept your secrets, okay? And it's someone where you know they've got your back. I was working with a particular team. I'd coached for years a particular person who then became MD, taking over a particular organization. And we had a lovely team session. And in this team session, we had a powerful moment where she basically said, you know what, guys, I just want to tell you, these were the execs reporting to her, I just want to tell you something. I will always have your back, but I need to know that you've also got mine. Okay? Those are the people you end up literally going into the fire for, right? Not necessarily the person who's the greatest performer, perfect in everything. So let me ask you a question. Why do we always try to put our best foot forward? Why do we always try and show how perfect we are in everything? Why can't we smile because we're so self-conscious that my teeth aren't perfect or my teeth are yellow? There's also stuff for that. Those aren't the people we like. The people we like the most are not perfect. So why are we always trying to be perfect? Just think about it, okay? So if we want to be dynamic, we have to also be vulnerable. You make yourself vulnerable, right? I find it easy to relate to people I don't know well. I find it easy to relate to people I don't know well. This is a biggie. If you're the kind of person who struggles with strangers or struggles with people where you don't yet know them well, you're going to have problems as a leader because you'll always be in a dynamic environment where there are new people coming through. If you're like, well, Paul, it just takes me time, I have to get used to someone. Then you've got your poker face all the time. And guess what will happen? People will look at you and they'll have a fixed judgment about you based on their first impression. Then if you're like that for the first 2 weeks, they'll be like, okay, she is like this. And that's why some of you have had experiences where people will have fixed judgments about you, and then you're afraid, you're frustrated, and you're always saying, but they don't understand me, they don't really know me, I'm not really like that. Just because I'm quiet, Paul, I'm not really like, show them. Show them what you're like. Okay? What happens is when you've got a fixed judgment about someone, very often it sticks, doesn't it? You see, if I believe, who can I use as an example, right? I look at people and I can't use it because of this. I can't use it because of this. I can't use it. Let me use, okay, if I believe that Ian is lazy. Oh no, guys. You see what I mean? Let's say I have a fixed judgment about it that Ian is lazy. You know what's going to happen? Tomorrow if Ian gives me some comprehensive, detailed report, you know the first thing I'm going to say, who helped you? Can you see what's happening? Because my judgment is fixed. And for some of you, what's happened is because you don't manage your personal brand, especially with new people you are meeting with, interacting with, they end up having a fixed view about you. And it's not right that they've got that fixed view, especially when you show them evidence that you're not what they thought. But the sad thing is a lot of people don't change their minds. So what you want to be is dynamic, and you want to be able to learn to connect with people that you don't know that well. I'm not saying become their best friend. There's a difference between being friends with someone and being friendly. How many of you are the kind of people, and I see it when I coach various people, how many of you are the kind of people where as you go out, you will connect a bit with the people at the reception? Even if you don't know them that well. There are more of you. I've seen it happening. All right? The security guards. Huh? Oh, okay, you've been told you mustn't. All right? But the point I'm making is connect with people that you don't know that well. If a new person is on the team, if someone is promoted into a position, don't just be like, oh, okay, this person is now promoted, and you just keep quiet and you've got your straight face. They're probably wondering, how are these people going to receive me? You get what I'm saying? There'll always be changes. People are going to be promoted. Maybe some people will be demoted. I don't know. But there's always flux. And what you want to do is, if you want to be dynamic, If someone is promoted into a new position, go up to them and say, you know what, we've got your back. We'll make this work. We'll support you. Does that make sense? Because if you've got that look on your face, what is that communicating? We all need encouragement, don't we? Okay? So watch out for this one. This is also important because you don't know who that person is and where they can take you. One of the principles I've learned in my career is to make sure that I'm respectful, not just to senior people, but also to junior people. Remember that first point? You respect everyone. If you only respect people that are senior, people will see through it and they'll think this is fake. Yeah. This person is just brown-nosing, slooshing up to the senior people. It's not genuine, right? One of the things I found in my career is years ago, there were people who were in middle management that I was coaching. And I went the extra mile with them. If they needed counseling, if family issues came up, etc., I was there. Oh, Paul, we've got this issue with our daughter, with our thing. I was there. Despite the fact that they were in middle management at the time. Today, some of these people are now directors of organizations. Who's the first person they think of when they need someone to do something for their organization? Okay? So part of doing this is my attitude towards you is I can see the treasure in you that might not be apparent right now. Does that make sense? I'm talking real life experience. One of my main clients, I first met when they're in middle management. I coached them, I did various things well for them. And now for the last 3 or 4 years, their organization pays me upfront at the start of the year for all the stuff I'm going to do for the rest of the year. And the person is the director there now. Does that make sense? And if I trace my career, I can see that, wait a minute, how did that door open into that organization? Oh, it was that guy. He moved companies and then he wanted me to do this for him. Oh, but I first met him when he was just in middle management. Does that make sense? Okay. So try to see the treasure that's in the people around you because you don't know where they'll be in 3 years' time. Like for some of you, it's massive. Yeah. Do you know what I like about this principle though? The person is not yet there. You get what I'm saying? You're not doing it because you're guaranteed that the person in 5 years' time is going to be this amazing leader. All you're doing is you're saying, I'm a respectful person. I respect you, whether right now you're a receptionist or you're middle management, wherever you are. I won't only respect you just because you're CEO. And then after some time, you look back and you see that it's come back to me in interesting ways because the person remembered that, you know what? Before this building was built, before I had made it, you supported me. Does that make sense? I've seen it with business people. I've seen it with business people today. There's some people where I can literally see that this person is going to go super duper far. And I say to them, you know what, I want to get involved with you at ground level because I know this thing is going to work out. And I don't want you to think I'm one of those people who's only riding the bandwagon once you're now famous. But dynamic leaders have got an eye for that. They can actually see that type of potential. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm a resourceful person who is generous with my knowledge and contacts. This is so crucial. How many of you are resourceful people? You're the kind of person where you might not have all the answers, but you know who has the answers. Okay? That's a resourceful person. You know those people where if you're hungry, you know somewhere along the line they'll have something to eat. I've seen it with certain women and their handbags. You know, who's like that here? You've always got a cookie. You've always got something. Tablets, yes. Plaster, sellotape. Okay. One-stop shop for all. And what's amazing is dynamic people are resourceful. You see, the answer isn't always yes. Sometimes the answer can be not yet or not me, but let me show you who you should go to. And you want to be resourceful. You want to be the go-to person for certain things, okay? And for some of you, you've started to build a reputation where you're just the go-to person and people come to you. You want to be that if you want to be dynamic, all right? You're generous with your knowledge and with your contacts. So you will always give people a referral. Hey, talk to so-and-so. Hey, let me send you so-and-so's information. And whenever people do that, please thank them. Because you can't put a price to that. And I'm not talking about just any contact. I'm not saying, oh, do you need an electrician? Oh, here's the name. I'm talking about where I can phone someone and I can say, you know what, there's a brilliant guy I know, a really great guy I know, right? And if you speak to Adrian, he will tell you all you need to know about Cooper. Can you see what's happening there? Just my words, especially if I've got credibility with that individual, it's amazing what happened. I've managed to organize jobs for people just because I'm trusted by that leader, right? And I'm very well networked. I'm like, do you need this? I can hook you up. Cool. What do I gain from it? The satisfaction of knowing that I've recommended a high-level person for this individual. Does that make sense? Okay, that's extremely powerful. And when you're generous with your contacts and your referrals, people like you. I promise you, like years down the line, people will look back and they'll remember when things were difficult for me, this is the person who gave a good word to person X about me, and look where I am today. Make sense? Okay. I still remember the guy when I was in consulting. I'm still in consulting, but when I was consulting with an organization, I still remember and appreciate the guy who owned the company that I worked for, who gave me opportunity in my 20s to be doing leadership seminars, leadership talks, and so on as a young man. I still remember speaking to CEOs, MDs, and so on, pitching up there. I was about 25 or so at the time. And they're like, is this the Mr. Nyamuda? We were expecting someone more. And I'm thinking, okay, so to teach on leadership, you now need to have a beard and a potbelly. What are you saying? That was the implication. 5 minutes into the thing, they were sitting down, listening and learning. Okay? But I was given an opportunity. I didn't just walk in and go into that government department and say, hey guys, I can teach you leadership stuff. There's someone who got the contract who then said, I believe in you, Paul, and made it happen. Are you generous that way? Are you creating opportunities for people? Do you know when we talk about mentorship, when you're a mentor, there's what we call the career function of mentorship and the psychosocial function of mentorship. The career functions of mentorship, you're giving opportunities to people. You're saying, here's the platform, right? You're championing people. You're sponsoring them. What do we mean by sponsoring? I'm not meaning giving them money. I'm talking about how you literally, when you're in those meetings, you're always saying, you know who you should use. And then you mention them. You know, guys, for this project, I think you should try and use so-and-so, right? Dynamic leaders do that. And you know what? It doesn't matter what level you're at. You can be in middle management and doing that for people. And how do they feel about you? You can't help liking someone like that. You can't help liking someone who's always recommending you and singing your praises wherever they go. And it comes back, hey, via. How do you feel? How many of you have had a recent experience in the last 6 months where someone comes to you and says, oh, did you hear, you know what so-and-so was saying about you? They were just raving about you. They said this and this and this and this. How do you then feel toward that person? It's one thing if they come and tell you, hey, I was telling them about you and so on. Because then you start thinking they're trying to show how they made you. You know those people where it's like that. But when you hear it coming via someone else, you're like, wow, that's amazing. Dynamic people do that. They're always doing that. Okay? Generous with knowledge. This is an interesting one. This is an interesting one. Because generosity isn't just a physical thing. You can also be generous with information. You can also be generous with knowledge. I was doing a 3-day thing at Gibbs. It's a thing I do called the Next Manager. And I was speaking and I was pouring myself out. And one of my colleagues came to me and she said something interesting that got me thinking. She said, Paul, you know what I appreciate about you? You are so generous with your knowledge. I was thinking, okay, it's because I get FOMO on behalf of people that, oh, they don't know that. So I have to explain it to them. All right? But she says, you poured yourself out and you gave us everything. And the stuff you couldn't, you were basically saying, listen, I can send you more stuff. Send me an email. So you can be generous with your knowledge. Sometimes I say to people, you know what? If you're a clued up person and that's your gift, you're a teacher type of person, you love mentoring people, I say to people, start a learning circle in your department. Because you don't always have time to do it one-on-one with everyone. Start a learning circle. I did that with a guy who was working in treasury. with one of the banks, and people would complain and say, Paul, our boss is so clued up, but he doesn't have time to explain to us everything. I say to them, start a learning circle, a monthly meeting where we're saying, okay, this is the topic, let's do it. Those of you who love teaching, love mentoring, do that. And it's amazing what it does to the environment. I frequently offer people referrals, and I find it fulfilling, with no strings attached. You know, often I'll refer someone and say, hey, listen, you know, I'm so busy, I've got lots of work I'm doing, but listen, there are these guys, they've contacted me, and they want someone to do this talk, this talk, this talk. And people often think like there's a finder's fee, or there's something, or there's some catch to it. And I'm like, no, you're good at what you do, and I'm glad I've got an answer. So I'm grateful that you're available. Can you go for it? Does that make sense? Okay? Doesn't have to be finder's fee. Doesn't have to be something in it for you. I've got a seminar on networking skills. One of the key things about networkers is they're not takers, they're givers. They're generous people. And their mindset isn't, I'm doing this for you so that you scratch my back right now. Right? It's, this is what I do because I'm a generous person. It'll come back to me in other ways. Make sense? Okay. By the way, one of the things, if you study the science of likability, generosity is one of them. If I'm generous to you, okay? If I'm generous to you, and I know this can be seen as conflict of interest. I remember I was doing some... No, I know that because my custom is often in my sessions and so on, I give out books as freebies. But I remember, I don't know if it was in this I remember at the Reserve Bank, yes, the Reserve Bank, there was a thing that came up like, we're not allowed to accept any gifts and so on. But I randomly will be doing that because I love people learning. That's what I do, you know? And it's actually more to do with my personal brand, to show people that I've done books also. You know, I'm not just thumbsuck. I'm just being honest with you. But often when that happens, people then think like, what does he want from me? What does he want? I'm thinking, dude, you're not even a decision maker. Even if I wanted something from you, you don't make the decisions anyway, you know? You want to be known as someone who's generous. And if you study the science of likability, we tend to like generous people, especially when you know that it's not love with a hook. You know what I mean by love with a hook? When someone is doing something for you, but they're doing it out of guilt, or they're doing it because they want something from you. And sometimes the thing they want from you isn't always tangible. Sometimes they just want you to respect them more, or they just want you to, they think, oh, you know, this person is giving me this because they want to control me. There are many different reasons why people do what they do, hey? Okay? So you want to show that you're a generous person, no strings attached. Okay? I find it easy, this is now EQ. I find it easy to read the emotional state of others. This is so important. Have you noticed that you walk into a room and you have the one person just get straight into it? And you have the other person who just says, sure, Star, you're not looking quite yourself today. Is everything okay? Oh, you know, Paul, it's my gran. She's not feeling well. So some people can pick up that. That was just a hypothetical example, okay? It's not a real life situation, okay? In case people come to you, is your gran okay? Is everything fine? I know what people are like, right? But the point is to be able to read people, to be able to see, and I know some of you always have this poker face, so it's difficult to read you. Some of you, okay, there are a couple of you like that, right? I find it easy to read the emotional state of others. Do you know what this does? It makes you extremely powerful if you can do this. Because you'll literally know, okay, I think we need to close the meeting now. Because you can read the person's face. And what you do is when you state it to the person, don't make a judgment. So don't say, oh, you seem to be angry. Because the person then gets offended. Just rather say, you're not smiling as you usually do. Can you see? I'm just observing the behavior. Then the person might say, I've got a headache. And then you're glad you just described the behavior as opposed to saying, why are you so angry? Make sense? Hey, you didn't look like you enjoyed my talk. I know it was that point I made about the teeth. I think you were offended by it. Yeah, now. You get what I'm saying? No, don't make a judgment. What you just do is you observe the behavior. You observe what's going on with the person. Some people, it's the body language. Okay? Some people, it's the frown. Usually with frowns, with frowns you just say, is it okay? Because with frowns you say, you're frowning, and the person thinks they weren't frowning. They just have more wrinkles now, and then they're offended. People are very sensitive, eh? Okay. I'm often aware of how others may be feeling, and then I adapt my behavior accordingly. Can you see that part of your EQ is you can observe the emotional state of other people? And the next level of EQ is, based on what you can see, you know how to adapt. A lot of people struggle with that. They'll observe, but they don't know how to adapt. Like, oh, you made me scared. You made me scared in that meeting. You made me scared and I just froze. That's not adapting. And by the way, people don't make you scared. You become scared. You observe something, and then based on how you process that stimulus, right, you become scared. So we have to stop blaming other people for our emotional state. The example I've used many times is if you say, oh, she just drives me up the wall. Does she physically place you on her bonnet and drive you up the wall? No, you end up the wall because you are reacting, not responding. Okay? You are in reaction mode, not in responding mode. All right? So I'm able to adapt my behavior accordingly. That's very powerful. I'm always aware of and in touch with my own feelings. Some people aren't, eh? Some people don't know when to stop. They're not in touch with their, and I'm not looking anywhere because some people, if my eyes land on certain people, they're like, he's talking about me, he's talking about me. So I'm just going to look straight on this one. Yeah. And then those who can turn red will start going red and blushing and so on. So I'm just going to look straight. But the point I'm making is some of you don't know when to stop. And you know why? It's actually an EQ thing. You're not actually aware of your emotional state. Your gift is that you're very focused and you get very immersed in what you're doing. But at a certain point, you don't know how to feel your body. You know what I'm talking about, feeling your body. So our body sends messages to us to say, listen, dude, I think you need time off now. So are you able to describe your current emotional state? I'm just going to give you literally 30 seconds. How are you feeling right now? Are you able to say, I'm feeling sad? For some people, they're limited in their vocab. Have I sent you guys the emotional wheel? I'm going to send it through to Star, and she'll send it to everyone. And you'll see it's a wheel of emotions, and you'll see that there are many more negative emotions than positive ones. I think some of you who I've coached, I've given that to you. Extremely powerful. People have said to me, Paul, we need vocab concerning our emotions. Because some of you only know a few emotions: sad, mad, glad. Hey, I'm so glad. You'll see people, they only use, the vocab is very limited. I'm really glad about my promotion. Is there another emotion you can use there? Are you excited? Are you ecstatic? Are you feeling thrilled? Right? Are you feeling hopeful? I felt so embarrassed yesterday. I felt really insecure when I was chatting to my boss the other day. These are all emotions. And you see, if we want to communicate with people accurately, we have to expand our emotional vocab. Because if you come and you say to me, Paul, I was upset with you when you said such and such. But what you really wanted to say was, Paul, I felt so mortified. I wanted to crawl underneath a grain of sand. Completely different message. Okay? I'm always aware of and in touch with my own feelings. When asked, I'm able to identify and describe my emotional state. When someone asks you, are you able to say, this is where I'm at? And I'll give you the tools and you can just practice them. Perfect practice makes perfect. I enjoy learning from others. Guys, this is a biggie. Some people are too proud to learn. There's a guy who I like, who I look up to in terms of some of the things he's accomplished. He's written so many books. I think I've got about 50 of his books. If you come to my study, you'll see, those of you who've seen some of my video clips, you'll see I've got like 3 walls just full of books, eh? This side, this side, this side, like from the ceiling down to the bottom, built-in shelves like this. Of this guy, I've got about 50 of his books. Why? Leaders are readers. I haven't read all the books. I'm not going to lie to you and act like I've read all of them. I've read some of them, but I've learned so much. There was a guy from Nigeria. I was doing a talk. It was at a women's academy. And this guy is brilliant. He's doing amazing things on the continent. He comes in and he hears the last bit of my talk. He's impressed. His assistant, another guy, comes, smartly dressed guy, comes to me. And he says, my boss is asking, where can he get your books? He wants to buy all your books. I've done about 32 books. I think you know I've done lots of books. He says, he wants to buy all your books. Okay? Those are people who are hungry for knowledge. You see? They're hungry for knowledge. I enjoy learning from others. And you know what I've learned? I'm an expert in my area. But there are other people who have other areas. And I need to sit down. And I need to shift hats. You're always either walking in authority or under authority. You understand that? A lot of people don't know how to shift gears. So when I'm in my house, I'm in authority. When I get onto the road, I'm under the authority of the Gauteng Metro Police. No, I'm not under their authority. Does that make sense? When I go to my kids' school, if a security guard says, Paul, you need to park, or they don't usually know my name, but they just say, yes, sir, park over there. I can't say to them, do you know who I am? Do you know who you're talking to? I'm under their authority. And here's the problem. A lot of us who are experts in one area, I've seen it happening. Even in your organization, I see it happening. A lot of people who are clued up in one area, somehow they assume they know everything about everything. And they become a know-it-all. And then they embarrass themselves speaking when they should have just been keeping quiet. You know the people I'm talking about. Like, listen, this is what you trained in. Just sit down, keep quiet for now, and we'll teach you a few things. And when you now want to share your stuff, I'll sit down, I'll keep quiet, and I'm really looking forward to learning from you. And let me just say something. It happens with men more than women. The dynamic I described. No, seriously. Women generally have a lower estimation of themselves than they ought, and men, the opposite. On average, guys, on average, according to research. Go and look it up. I enjoy learning from others. I enjoy teaching and coaching others. There's no point in being clued up and having lots of knowledge, but you never share it. So the key thing to do is, if you know something, how many of you see yourselves as an expert in an area? Raise your hand. I'm hoping I have more hands. Please, guys, please. I want to enjoy my afternoon like, okay, I got some hands. Okay, cool. Right? Here's the thing about being an expert. There's no point saying you're an expert if you don't share your knowledge. And you know that the more of your knowledge that you share, the more you get. Seriously, you retain more information when you're teaching it. That's why I often say to people, these talks we do and so on, go, you guys are going to get the PowerPoints, you're going to get the audios and so on. Go and teach other people. When you're teaching someone else, you retain information, 75% of it you retain. When you're just listening, you lose most of it. Because come on, let's be honest, you're going to go from here and it's going to be business as usual. There'll be a few of you who will say, I'm going to go through those notes, I'm going to re-listen to the audio because I want to get it into me. Have you noticed that when I'm doing these talks and so on, I don't use notes, do I? I'll explain to you why. It's in me. There's a guy who was speaking. And his computer crashed. Something happened. Guys were fixing it up and it crashed. And the guys were nervous. And they said, oh, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And he says, that computer's got a hard drive, hasn't it? Yes. He says, I'm that hard drive. The stuff that's inside there came from here. I put the stuff in. So it's important in your area of expertise to know your stuff so well that if the computer crashes, you can still speak on the subject. Does that make sense? But the only way you get there is teach it a lot. Teach it a lot, listen to the stuff over and over again, and be a master at it. I made a decision in 98 when I was doing my master's research on leadership. I made a decision, I want leadership to be my thing. What's your thing? No, Paul, as long as I maintain keep my job and just ask for and no more my family, as long as they survive, then that'll be fine. That's okay, that's your choice. But that doesn't make you a dynamic leader. Okay. I like working with people who are passionate about the work that they do. You know what happens? Passion allows you to make certain mistakes. Have you noticed that? Not any type of mistake, but have you noticed that someone who's passionate, I can stumble over my words right now. I can make a grammatical error. I can have a typo, like there's something I spotted as I was teaching, a misspelling of a particular word. I can have that, but my passion is infectious, isn't it? Okay? So, are you passionate about your area? Even if you don't know it perfectly. How passionate are you? And do people see your passion? That's one of the weaknesses of a lot of salespeople. Have you noticed when they try and sell something to you, they don't look convinced about the product itself. You know those people who try and sell something to you and say, yeah, but I mean, you can try the other guys, you can see. And then they're the great salespeople where they like literally can sell ice to an Eskimo. That's how good they are. What is that? It's the passion. And when you can surround yourself with passionate people, when you're having a low day, they energize you. Sadly, some teams are full of people that drain you. How many of you find yourself sometimes surrounded by people like that? You're feeling really happy, in such a good mood when you arrived at work, greeted the security guards, the receptionist, and then the moment you start talking to a particular individual, it's like they're sucking the life out of you. You know what my advice is there? Run, run, run as fast as you can. Run. Seriously. During a discussion, I like to make inquiries about the given topic before giving my opinion. I've said to you before, the person with the most power in a meeting is the person who speaks second, not the person who speaks first. And yet many of us, we make the mistake of wanting to get our words in first. The power of this inquiry, do you know what it does? This is the art of dialogue, isn't it? The power of an inquiry is that I'm listening to you and I'm getting the fodder from what you're saying. When I'm now proposing to you, I'm talking about a business proposal, when I'm now proposing my ideas to you, guess what? I'm using part of that fodder in my narrative. And you end up feeling like Paul has been listening to me and he's using even some of my words. Okay, cool, I agree with you. There's something at a psychological level where we want to know someone has listened to us, and we're more likely to listen to them when we know they've been listening to us. So those of you who tend to finish off people's sentences, dominate conversations, you know who you are, okay? Just work on this, because this is the art of dialogue. I prefer the win-win of dialogue to the win-lose of debate. You see, those of you, how many of you like winning arguments? You know what the problem is with that? Sometimes the problem is it works well in the court of law. But in human relations, it doesn't work, because I can win an argument, but if you feel you've lost out, it doesn't help our relationship. I was counseling a couple recently. They'd been going through a lot of stuff. The wife wanted to rebuild the marriage. The husband had moved out. And I got them to just sit down. I said, okay, let's talk. And I gave them certain tools and that kind of thing. We listened to the wife speaking for some time. And then we listened to the husband. It was now his turn to talk. He was barely into his narrative. She was already saying, yeah, he's lying. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I said, can you see what's happening? This guy's frustrated in this marriage. You're trying to win him back. But can you see what you're doing? And I said, you know what, you'd make a good lawyer, because I agree with everything that you're saying. But we've just spent all these many minutes listening to you. The moment he starts speaking, you're like a tank and you start bulldozing him. Just listen to him. I prefer the win-win of dialogue to the win-lose of debate. Dialogue is 100%, debate is 100% advocacy and 0% inquiry. Dialogue is 50% inquiry and 50% advocacy. You still want your story to be known, but you also want to inquire and you also want to learn. What's your balance like? I listen with empathy even when I disagree. So I can say, okay, so you were saying you're offended when I said this and that I should have used a different word instead of that. Just help me to understand, is that right? And the test whether you're really listening or not is, can you restate what the person has said? The dynamic leader has got those skills. They're able to do so. They're able to do so. And only afterwards they then propose something else. The word empathy means empathos. It comes from a word empathos, which literally means to feel into. It's one of the quickest ways to get people to like you. It's difficult not liking someone who demonstrates empathy toward you. If I say, guys, I've got a migraine, and then you say, oh, Paul, no, man. How'd you carry on lecturing and you've got a migraine? You say that with your Joburg accent. Oh, man, Paul, really? What are you going to do for the rest of the day, Paul? And you say that to me. I can't help but like you because I feel like you feel me. I love to put people at ease in all my interactions. And a biggie is in meetings, isn't it? When you sit down in a meeting, there's someone who's junior, who's feeling insecure. All you need to just say is, it's really great to have you here. We're really looking forward to her input that she's going to give us today because she's got strong background in this area. Then she knows, oh, I can actually speak in this meeting. Because isn't it true, we often go into meetings and we feel a bit like, this meeting is above my pay grade. I don't know if I'm allowed to actually speak or not speak. This is an art, and I know I teach this in the art of dialogue. I've got a video clip on the art of dialogue where I go deep into this. You ask someone how are they feeling. Often when people are in meetings, it's back-to-back meetings that they've come from. So you have to detox them from the previous meeting, right? I've been in situations where if I hadn't touched base with someone, I could have cracked the wrong joke. But I'll touch base with them at the start, and then they'll tell me, so-and-so, such and such has been happening to this person. This one was involved in an accident, and they're very close to me, and I'm concerned. Are they going to be able to walk again? People will say that to me in my meetings. But I only find out if I put them at ease, and I also touch base with them. If you're secure, one of the key ways of putting people at ease is when you're secure as a person. If you're insecure, the other people around you will feel a bit funny. They'll feel like they're treading on eggshells. Ever had it when you know someone next to you is insecure, then you don't know, and you start hesitating, you start feeling like I can't shine enough next to them because they'll be jealous. Any of you have those relationships with people? So you're always holding back. I'm almost done. I like to invite the correct decision makers to my meetings. We spoke about that earlier on, didn't we? Are you able to invite movers and shakers to your meetings? There was a guy I used to do some consulting for. He was in middle management, but people admired him because he could get the biggest politicians into his meetings. It's a skill. For some of you, you reject yourself before you can be rejected. Hey, I know they're busy. Oh, so-and-so is so busy. But he's the decision maker. But he's so busy, Paul, so we'll just meet. I'll just meet with my people. What's the point of meeting if you can't get him into the meeting? Okay? And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. That's it from me. It's been really wonderful working with you this year. We'll still do a bit more work together next year. I wish you great festive season. And want to encourage you. I know it's baby steps for some of you who don't like reading or listening to material, but just say to yourself at the end of this year, what's my growth step? Even coming out of a session like this, what's the one thing, even if it's just one nugget, don't try and do everything. Just what's that one thing I can actually work on, right? And then study it further, master it. You know, go and read up on it, get a book on it. Pop me an email and say, Paul, is there a book on this? I need to delve into this topic more because I think it's key to my growth. And then just use your holiday period, yes, to relax, but also develop yourself. And by the time you come back, beginning of next year, people will be seeing a different you. You guys think you can do that? Awesome.